Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
We'll visit 7 operations that have made stewardship and conservation a top priority as we highlight the 2020 winners of the Environmental Stewardship Award.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hi everybody, and welcome to a special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Russell Nemitz. Thank you for joining us. You know, each year the Environmental Stewardship Award program recognizes our nation's best cattle and livestock operations for their outstanding stewardship practices and conservation achievements. So today, we're going to share their stories with you. We begin in Region 1 with a visit to the winning operation from New York.
In western New York, just 45 minutes east of the city of Buffalo, S.K. Herefords is a family cattle and crop operation that was started in 1996. That's when fifth-generation farmers Phil and Don Kepler merged their operation with the one owned by family friend Dave Schubel.
I'm the K in the SK, and it's a family-run farm with my daughter Alana and her husband Zach and my wife Dawn and my business partner Dave Schubel. Alana and Zach are the 6th generation, and I have 7 grandchildren and 1 on the way that I hope will be the 7th.
Taking care of the land is a top priority for everybody here at SK Herefords, from me to my parents to Zach and anybody that we come in contact with. We make sure that that priority is clear.
While their 1,200 acres in upstate New York is a great place for raising the family's cattle, the farm's geographic location creates some challenges.
All of our decisions are based upon our location. We have Oak Orchard Creek, which goes through the eastern part of the farm, which flows directly into Lake Ontario.
We've taken a lot of steps to help keep the creek clean. We have buffer strips that are between our cattle and the creek, and we've made a lot of permanent fencing around the creek to kind of deter the cattle from getting close to the creek.
You'll get a 3-4-inch rainstorm that'll come through, and the water's gushing across the pasture and it's carrying those nutrients. Well, when it hits that buffer strip, filter strip, it grabs those nutrients and boom, holds them right in place instead of letting them go down and continuing on into the creek. Our goal is to keep that water as pristine as possible so that all the people that go canoeing and kayaking and fishing and swimming can all have that wonderful experience of having great, clean, fresh water.
The vision at S.K. Herefords is to produce high-quality beef while conserving the farm's natural resources. They accomplish that with no-till cropping systems and a rotational grazing plan that protects the health of their soil and grass. They also built a covered feeding barn to give cattle shelter from the elements.
The cows love it. It's concrete, and that's where we feed the cows during the wintertime, and it gives them some reprieve from the winter weather. They can go outside up to the other barn for water, and then in the summertime it provides awesome shade for them to get cool.
It's a huge benefit for cattle health, cattle performance, cattle gain. We have a section at the end where the manure can be scraped to, and then it can be loaded into the manure spreader to be spread on, the various fields that might need fertilizing.
The family also looks for ways to enhance wildlife habitat on their farm, fencing out 5 acres of milkweed for monarch butterflies and working to protect songbirds.
On a regular basis, my dad and I and Zach make decisions that will benefit the wildlife in terms of delaying cutting a hayfield, because we know that the ground nesting songbirds are getting ready to hatch out and we don't want to destroy their nests.
SK Herefords really believes that cattle and the environment work together, that they are symbiotic.
SK Herefords is a farm that extension specialists love to have because they're always willing to try new things. They're willing to listen and then evaluate what that might mean for their operation.
It's all part of being steward. Does it cost us money? Yeah, it sure does. Why do we do it? Because it's the right thing to do.
Telling their story of sustainability to beef consumers is also important. A few years ago, SK Herefords began selling beef at farmers markets in upstate New York.
We love connecting with the consumers when we sell our beef at the farmers markets. We sit between two cities of over 1 million people, and those folks, when we go to their farmers markets, they like to talk with the farmer. They like to be able to connect with that farming community because they don't have that opportunity. And we get to tell our story. We get to tell the story of our farm.
And it addresses the desire of the consumer now to find out where their food comes from. So what better way to do it than have the producer actually tell them on a Saturday morning at a market?
When we go to the farmers markets, you basically talk to people, and I've noticed in the past years, like, you've actually had to really educate people, but now they're starting to like relate to us. You're like, wow, they're starting to get it.
So interacting with our customers at the farmers market, it really gives us the opportunity to show the customers that we not only care for our cattle, but we care for the land as well.
Working together each day, the SK Hereford family lives their commitment to raising cattle the right way and managing their land to ensure the operation is around for generations to come.
I believe in what we're doing. I wouldn't be here doing it if I didn't. And as having young children, I want to leave this place in as good a shape as I can for the future generations.
I think we're living our dream of farming, raising cattle, raising forages, raising kids and grandkids. I think it's a very happy place at SK Hereford's.
We care for the land because it's a God-given responsibility. We're all part of the land, and we need the land, the resources of the land, and we need it to carry on to the next generation.
One by one, we're highlighting the 2020 regional winners of the Environmental Stewardship Award. Let's head to Region 2 and meet the winners from Mississippi.
As the dawn breaks on a summer day in central Mississippi, cattle are out grazing on Southern Cross Farm. Gary and Nancy Jackson wanted to return to their roots in agriculture, so they started this family cattle operation together.
My husband Gary and I were both raised on small cattle operations, but we started this operation in 2005 with 270 acres and 20 cows to expand to the operation it is today.
We both had the dream of having a cattle operation. We love the environment, the land.
I grew up on this farm. We purchased it when I was 11 years old and bought our first set of cattle. So it's kind of grown with me and I've grown with it.
Southern Cross Farm is the quintessential family farm. You have multi-generations, both my parents, my husband and I, my sister. We're all passionate about the industry, about cattle production, and about the opportunities that it provides for our family to do something together.
Gary leads the Extension Education program at Mississippi State University, and Nancy is a practicing veterinarian. Those skills are valuable as they care for their cattle and their land in a way that models best practices.
I'm a teacher at heart, and so this farm is extremely important to me, not just to produce quality beef, not just to be a great environmental steward, but to be able to use the practices we have here to teach others.
As a veterinarian, I'm really interested in the science behind the cattle raising, the nutrition of the grass, which affects the cattle growth and weight gain, and the different species of grass and the palatability of the grass.
When they bought this property, the land was in poor condition. With years of hard work, the Jacksons have taken steps to restore the health of the land.
You know, the whole landscape has changed. I've been able to see that process go from wooded acres to productive grasslands.
God designed this land that we have here to be a great grass producer. The slope of the land, it's not suited for crops, or it shouldn't be put in crops. The soil type is well suited to grass and a variety of forages. So we're using the cows to help increase the soil health.
First of all, you can work with the cattle themselves to replenish the environment because they're an ecosystem in themselves. You can be an excellent environmental steward and at the same time grow a quality product for the consumer.
We've taken soil samples so that we know what the soil sample says that the land needs. And then cows are wonderful fertilizer applicators if we move them around properly. So we really try to utilize the cows to build up the land.
Gary and Nancy here at Southern Cross Farm, they're committed to being here long term, to being viable, to have their ground, their grass, their land viable, to have the wildlife here, to be a partner with their cattle here on the grazing operation.
The Jacksons have added solar-powered electric fencing to help their rotational grazing program. And Nancy keeps a close eye on the health of their pastures, working to maintain plant diversity and controlling harmful weeds.
Weed and brush control is an important part of stewardship because if I have weeds on my property, their certain growth characteristics are either A, toxic to cattle, or they're not going to allow the cattle to graze around them. So in our grazing land, we use herbicides to produce more forage for the cows from that land. It's getting out and looking and paying attention to what's going on the ground.
Over the years, Gary and Nancy have worked with NRCS to partner on new water troughs, as well as heavy use areas, and a variety of projects aimed at protecting their land and water.
We have implemented a number of NRCS programs on our property in terms of stream management zones. We put in cattle crossings and those kind of things that have really improved the bottom line on the beef production that we have, but also it's helped improve the environment.
They never stop going the extra mile. She's always trying to find out what could be something new that she can do out here, what new practices she can adopt, what could she do to keep her streams healthy. She's always looking to see what could she do to be a better steward of the land.
The Jacksons have also set aside nearly 70 acres as food and forage areas for deer and other wildlife, and they actively work to foster pollinator habitat on their pastures. Gary and Nancy aim to manage every aspect of Southern Cross Farm as one healthy ecosystem and to steward the land in a way that results in a sustainable future.
Sustainability is very important to us on Southern Cross Farm because we have a moral obligation to feed people, and we have a moral obligation to have this land still be here for future generations.
You get out what you put in, so we need to be good stewards of the land, make sure we take care of our land so it takes care of our cattle, who in turn take care of us.
I have 2 children, a 6-year-old daughter named Ava and a 4-year-old son named Silas, and they absolutely love being a part of this farm. I hope that this farm is a multi-generation farm for years to come, and that excites me.
My hopes for the future is that this land stays productive and is cared for and is loved in the way that Gary and I have loved it. I do feel that our place is making a difference.
I love this farm, I love this land. I'm going to leave it better than I found it.
Still to come here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll introduce you to 5 more winners of the 2020 Environmental Stewardship Award right after this.
If you're looking for outstanding forage-developed Angus cattle, look no further than Yon Family Farms in Ridge Springs, South Carolina. The Yon family is hosting their 18th annual fall sale on October 30th at 11 a.m. on their farm. They're offering 250 bulls and 100 females. Proven genetics from a family committed to their customers. Find out more at yonfamilyfarms.com.
We didn't just design the 6M tractors with you in mind, we designed them with you by our side. The new 6M tractors from John Deere, reimagined by you, for you. For a limited time, get 0% APR financing on qualifying 6 Series tractors and round balers. Experience the new 6M at your local John Deere dealer.
If you need a stock trailer built to stand strong in tough country, you need a Big Ben trailer. Designed and used by a family that runs cattle themselves.
I think one of the things that makes Big Ben different is that I don't know of any other trailer manufacturer that actually ranches for a living, and we get firsthand use. We get to know what works and what doesn't work, and if we find something that makes our life easier, we'll do it and design it into our trailer.
Big Bend trailers are packed with features. Well-designed latches, movable gates, LED lights, and an 1.5-inch gap around the edges for easy cleanout. Year after year, they keep building Big Bend trailers better.
Without a doubt, they're 10 times better than they were 25 years ago. Lots of options and features and user-friendly options that we have now that they didn't have back in the day.
Ranch tough at a fair price. Find out more at bigbendtrailers.com.
Today we're taking a look at the 2020 regional winners of the Environmental Stewardship Award. Let's head to Region 3's award recipients from Iowa.
In southwest Iowa, Randy and Jill Yukon have been raising cattle and growing crops for decades. Now, their farm has entered a new phase as they've started the process of passing the operation on to their daughter and son-in-law, Michelle and Steve Myers.
Randy and I were thrilled to have the next generation coming on, Michelle and Steve, to take over the operation.
It means a lot to have my family involved, that they're interested in helping achieve what we've started.
It's actually a century farm that we live on, which means it's been in the family 100 years. We're just really proud to be here and be able to do what we love.
Soil conservation has been a priority for Randy and Jill, and they've found that cattle are a valuable tool to help them achieve their goals. The Angus-based herd provides an opportunity to put fragile hillsides that are prone to erosion into more stable pasture.
In this section of Iowa, southwest Iowa, we have some fragile soil in places. Because of the fragile soil, we have to protect our runoff and try and hold everything we can, nutrients, water, on the farm.
The streams that are run through our farms, both the 7 Mile and the Nishnabotna, end up running into the Missouri River, which then flows into the Mississippi River and flows down to the Gulf of Mexico. So we are all engaged in the effort to limit the soil erosion and limit nutrients that leave our farm. So we do everything that we can, cover crops, terracing, to prevent nutrients from getting into those naturally occurring waterways.
Some of the things we've found through cover crops, through grazing cattle, is that's what holds our dirt in place, and that's what's kind of kept us successful and profitable in the years. God only gave us so much soil. We want to make sure that we keep it for generations to come.
Randy and Jill realized rotational grazing could help them maximize production while still protecting the land. In order to make their grazing plan work, the family had to install nearly 10,000 feet of fencing, 3,000 feet of water pipeline, and 8 water tanks.
We had to make investments in fencing and in water because you have to get water to each of these paddocks. So it's a work in progress. We still have a lot more that we want to do, but we've been able to improve our pastures over the years.
We try to make it as labor inintensive as possible by having it set up so cattle get used to the rotation. When you open a gate, holler at them, they come. The rotational grazing also gives the grass a little break. Depending on the size of the paddock, it might be a few days, it might be a week, changing them between paddocks.
We really love rotational grazing out here. It's worked really well for our operation from the standpoint of we're not overgrazing the grass. We're giving certain paddocks a break to get some rain, to get some sun, to get some regrowth. We take that opportunity to subdivide pastures as well with some high tensile wire and some posts along the way to kind of divide a pasture further depending on what we need at that point in time for our grass sustainability.
We've always said through the years that our cattle producers are some of our best stewards of the land. This is a definite example, the Yukon family, no question about it.
The Yukon and Myers families made an unusual choice for a farm in Iowa. They took cropland they'd purchased and converted it into pasture for the cattle. That required renovation work to ensure the land had everything it needed to support their cattle.
It was quite the project. Seeded down a bunch of grass, put in a bunch of cross fences, built 2 big ponds. Below those ponds, we put a couple watering sources for our cattle. We've also since then restored a well and are working on putting in some paddock fences for rotational grazing.
We just looked at it and said, this doesn't really make sense. It should have always been in pasture. So we were just doing our part to try and do what's best for the land.
Not very many people that I know
are buying cropland and putting it back into pasture land and making it profitable. That's the thing that I admire the most about Randy and Jill and their family.
Yukon Farms also has a feedlot, which allows them to finish their cattle. The manure from the feedlot is collected and applied to their crop acres as fertilizer. In this way, all aspects of the farm work as part of a sustainable ecosystem.
We take a holistic approach on our operation where, we're raising the corn, we feed it through the cattle, then we use the manure from the feedlot to put back to the crops, and it all just kind of works seamlessly.
We take advantage of services that help us analyze our soils, know exactly what needs to be put on the soils so that we can prescribe what needs to be put out there.
It's fantastic to come across people like Randy and Jill and Steve and Michelle. They've been working hard to try and not only utilize the livestock manure to the best of the ability, but no-till and cover crops and all the technologies that they've instituted on their farm.
It's clear Randy and Jill have a deep commitment to stewardship and conservation, and these are values that have been firmly embraced by the next generation.
I believe cattle and a good, clean environment can go hand in hand, that the cattle are the reason why we are able to be good stewards of the land here in Southwest Iowa.
Cattle work really well for us. We're hopeful that we can continue to do that into the future and that more people can adopt practices to keep livestock on the landscape.
If we're going to be here farming this ground in 100, 200 years, this is the stuff we have to do now to make sure we're moving in the right direction.
Myself and my family care for the land, care for the cattle, because we feel it is the right thing to do. Without water, without sunshine, without grass, you don't have beef. It all works together.
Well, we've already seen 3 great operations as we highlight the 2020 regional winners of the Environmental Stewardship Award. Now let's head to Region 4 and meet the winners from Oklahoma.
Not long after sunrise on the tall grass prairie of the Double C Cattle Company, the Coffey family is working together to move a group of their cows and calves past the wind towers that dot the landscape on their ranch.
This land is able to produce enough beef, enough electricity, and enough water to supply close to 70,000 homes. And I think that's pretty neat for 30,000 acres right here in nowhere, Oklahoma. Myself, my wife Ruth, and our 3 children, Aaron, Seth, and Sarah, all manage Double C Cattle Company, located in the Arbuckle Mountains in southern Oklahoma. We run about 1,000 commercial spring calving cows.
We really value land, livestock, and legacy. Those are our 3 most important words, pretty much, for the Double C Cattle Company.
While building the family cattle operation, Chuck spent many years as a range and pasture consultant with the Noble Research Institute. With that experience, he's skilled at identifying what the land needs and implementing the practices that will improve all the resources.
Our family has put in probably up to 50 miles of fence, separating pastures so we can rotationally graze the cattle.
They understand the land. They understand the interactions between the cattle, the plants, the soils, the environment. The way the Coffeys actually utilize this land, beef cattle are a strong component of the outcomes that you see today. It's through the grazing management, rest, recovery, knowing how long to recover these native grasses, knowing how to manage that so that you have that desired effect that you expect can be achieved. And it is through grazing management that occurs.
At the end of the day, we're grass farmers, and that's what we want to be. And when you see that in a native grassland setting, there's nothing more rewarding.
One major battle the Coffey family fights on their land: invasive trees that can crowd out all other plant life.
We consider red cedar a scourge in this part of the country.
The problem with cedar trees, they drink lots of water, they destroy all the ground underneath, and then they create areas of erosion.
Sometimes it'll be an eastern red cedar forest, and you get absolutely nothing out of it as far as grazing, or the wildlife can't use it, people can't use it.
To control eastern red cedar, and a lot of the cedar we have is also ash juniper, but to control it, we do it primarily through fire. These grasses actually evolved under fire and grazing, so it's something that's healthy and needed for an ecosystem like this.
Through prescribed fire, we've noticed several benefits that are clear and evident to us every day. So it's extremely encouraging for me to go across the pastures, and especially pastures that I've burned, because I can look at places where there was no grass and now there is grass. That to me is just Mother Nature saying, you're doing the right thing.
In addition to using fire and mechanical methods to restore the tall grass prairie, the Coffeys have expanded the water system on their land, installing solar-powered pumps so cattle can reach water in more places on the ranch.
Water is a limiting factor on this property, so we've done a lot of development with solar wells to help with grazing distribution.
I would definitely say the proudest thing that I have found with what my dad has done has been the water development here. It's really changed the way we've been able to manage our cattle and graze cattle more efficiently on different sides of the pasture that we've not ever been able to get cattle over there because we don't have available water.
Always willing to share what they've learned about stewardship with other ranchers and their community, the Coffeys aim to manage all the elements of their ranch as one interconnected system. The result is improved grasslands, healthy streams, and a cattle operation that is sustainable for the land and their family legacy.
For me, stewardship is going to be taking care of this land in a way that my ancestors can be proud of, my kids are going to be proud of, and our community, that we live with and interact with every day can be proud of.
I definitely would say at this point in my life, since I have a son now, I think of more of the legacy. It doesn't really hit home to you what's going to happen next until you have a kid. And then you learn, you're not going to live forever. And this little guy right here is coming up next.
Stewardship is taking care of the land. I believe that if we can be good stewards and care for it while we're here, it'll be in good shape for the next generations.
We don't look at it that we own the land. We look at it as if we're blessed to have the privilege to manage the land during the short time that we're here, because it'll be here long after we are.
We'll be back with more Environmental Stewardship Award winners, including a trip to Colorado, right after this.
For commercial cow-calf producers, crossbreeding with Gelbvieh and Balancer is the smart, reliable, and profitable choice. Gelbvieh and Balancer females offer maternal superiority through increased fertility, greater longevity, and more pounds of calf weaned per cow exposed. In the feed yard, Balancer cattle deliver increased performance, improved feed efficiency, and excellent carcass merit. Balancer adds the pounds, make the grade, and deliver the value. Gelbvieh and Balancer, the smart, reliable, and profitable choice. Find out more at the website gelbvieh.org. Cattle producers across the country work hard to care for their animals and their land. The USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service is there to help. Find out how you can work with NRCS to develop a conservation plan for your operation. Find possible funding resources for implementing conservation practices, or get free expert advice on ways to improve your farm or ranch. Visit the website nrcs.usda.gov today.
And we're here now with the 2020 winners of the Environmental Stewardship Award Program, the Wooten and Burnham families of the Beatty Canyon Ranch in Kim, Colorado. What does this mean to you to be recognized among your peers for this prestigious award, Steve?
Kevin, what it means to us is it humbles us. This class of 2020 that were the recipients of the regional winners is an exemplary group of producers. They all are advocates. They all are at the best of what they do in their regions. And for NCBA and the sponsors to select us, we're honored, we're humbled. The Lord has blessed us.
And Joy, you said that there's folks that want to hear the message of beef industry sustainability. You all have always done such a good job sharing that message. What are 2 or 3 things you want people to know about beef industry sustainability?
That we take care of our land and our water so we can pass it down to the next generation and for the future.
And you're doing quite a job of that. You're, of course, 4th generation. This is the 5th and 6th generation on the ranch. What does that mean to you to represent that many years of progress in a very challenging climate to ranch in?
It has multiple meanings, Kevin. First of all, it's a process of passing it down, but that comes with a tremendous level of responsibility. But there's no greater lifestyle than being on the ranch on a daily basis with your grandchildren, your son-in-law and your daughter, working hand to hand, playing together, working together. But that responsibility of taking care of the land and making sure that there's a chance for these young people to come back and raise great beef.
Absolutely. And one last question for the folks sitting at home wondering what they can do to be more sustainable and be better stewards. What do you tell folks at home?
Our fellow producers are already sustainable. What they're doing, you're doing great. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep that question in your mind. Can I do better? Can I keep that continuous improvement? But tell your story. The consumer wants to know your story. They want to know about your family. They want to know about the animals, the care you have for your animals, and the love you have for your land.
That's outstanding. And speaking of stories, let's take a look at the Beatty Canyon Ranch story.
Steve Wooten and his family are moving their Red Angus cattle through the red rocks of Beatty Canyon Ranch in southeastern Colorado. This 27,000-acre cow-calf operation has been in Steve's family for generations.
This ranch was purchased by my great-grandfather in 1929, and our family has been there 4 generations for Joy and I, and we're fortunate to have the 5th and 6th generations on the ranch with us, and our daughter, son-in-law, and our grandchildren.
The Wootens were early adopters of conservation practices. They've had to be, since this part of Colorado receives fewer than 14 inches of moisture each year.
This is beautiful land where we live, but it has some challenges. Water is essential, and it's very sparse and hard to come by in this country.
The land in southeast Colorado where we live is fairly rough. It's semi-arid. We have periods of rain, and then we have periods of drought.
We're in an environment where we've got a lot of cactus, we've got minimal growth of forages, and we have to plan continuously how we can stockpile those forages against an area that doesn't have an abundant moisture.
With limited water and grass, Steve and Joy realized that a low stocking rate and good fences would allow them to rotate their cattle frequently, giving pastures a longer time to rest after grazing.
We now have 36 pastures that we can rotate cattle through so that the majority of the ranch during the growing season, the cattle aren't on it.
The reason why we rest the pasture is that when the cows go through the ranch and then the pasture gets rain on it, then it will grow grass and then the cows come back to that pasture. So it's kind of a full circle.
We've been able to improve our drought resistance through pasture management. By being able to have more rest in our pastures, grow more forage for next year by not having cattle in there, lets us go year over year without having to make drastic management decisions.
Steve closely monitors and measures the available forage, and the challenge to provide sufficient water to the cattle is always top of mind.
It's super important to have water on each of these pastures, and we have a pipeline system that runs from a pump, and it's running several miles to water all the cows in the pastures.
Putting tanks and strategically placing tanks in different areas of the pasture have allowed the cows to go and graze areas that predominantly they might not have grazed because there was no water. Also, by spreading the water out, you don't get a heavy impact in one certain area.
Another concern has been the impact of invasive plant species. In fact, several pastures and riparian areas required extensive work after years of harmful encroachment.
Tamarisk had completely dominated the riparian zone of the river, so we took on projects and worked with partners to eradicate the tamarisk on us. The other element that's been encroaching over hundreds of years due to fire suppression is pinyon juniper. We noticed in the 90s that we were about half stocked on a lot of our pastures that were heavily encroached by juniper. So over the years we've been slowly using mechanical means to clear the juniper out of those deep soils that should be predominantly grass, but still leaving plenty of juniper for wildlife, for birds, and for soil holding in areas where erosion is prone.
That is amazing to see the after effects after you clear the pasture and how much you gain back the grass. You're gaining acres back, the grazable acres.
It's not always just talking the talk, but putting their money where their mouth is, and they do it, with their own boots on the ground. It takes time, it's not easy, especially with as many things as Steve and Beatty Canyon is a part of, but it's still important, and they make the time to do it.
Beatty Canyon Ranch is home to a diverse wildlife population, and the family's management practices are aimed at improving the health of the range so both cattle and wildlife can thrive.
The things we've done to improve the land and the water, we've seen great improvement in the wildlife. We've seen more deer and bighorn sheep and turkey.
At Beatty Canyon Ranch, stewardship and conservation is in their DNA. And the Wooten and Burnham families work together to carry forward a legacy that has lasted for generations.
I love what I do because it fills my heart. It gives me great pride to see my kids and my parents all together.
I don't ever wake up in the morning and not appreciate where I live, and just truly blessed to be here and to be part of this family and this operation. I do feel there's some big shoes to fill, but I'm willing to take up the challenge and carry on the legacy of the ranch and the family and pass it on to the 6th generation.
It's the best life to be with your kids and to be in the great outdoors and to see God's creation every day. The land is everything to us. It's who we are.
To say that I love this land is even not enough of an expression of how we feel about this, how blessed we are that the Lord has put us in this position where we can be here, we can grow our family here, that we can leave a legacy behind.
We're not done talking about the 2020 ESAP regional winners. When we come back, we'll show you the Region 6 winner in Nevada. So stay with us.
When the field is your office, you never get tired of going to work. Cut, rake, bale, repeat. New Holland offers the power and versatility to get through the day. From small squares to large squares and everything in between, New Holland has you covered. Visit your local dealer today to find out more. New Holland.
When it comes to protecting cattle health, there's only one name you need to know: Bovolus. All 27 of Merck Animal Health's high-quality cattle vaccines are now unified under the Bovolus name. They're the same vaccines you've always relied on, only with updated names and packaging, so it's easy to select the right vaccine at the right time. No matter the need, you can trust there's a solution in the innovative, cattle-friendly, proven Bovolus vaccine portfolio. See the new look of protection at choosebovolus.com.
Today we're featuring the 2020 regional winners of the Environmental Stewardship Award. Let's take you to Nevada to see the Region 6 Award winner.
The rugged landscape of northeast Nevada is where you'll find the cattle that make their home on the Boys Ranch. Today, Steve and Robin Boys care for the land that has been in the family for generations.
My family has been on this particular ranch since 1945. Robin, my wife, and I have been ranching here for over 40 years. This ranch is interesting because it I tell people it's bigger than the small ones and smaller than the big ones, but it's never without family members being involved in the day-to-day work.
The cattle on Boys Ranch graze on a mix of private and public lands, with 13,000 acres owned and an additional 112,000 acres leased from the Bureau of Land Management.
It's a combination of private property and public property that we manage. So there's a lot of difference in public land versus private land holdings. If we want to make any improvements, a water trough, a fence line, anything like that, we have to go through a regulatory process, and that can take a lot of time to get that done.
80% of the land is government land, but we like to think that we treat it as our own. We're stewards of all the land, whether it's private or public, and we take that very serious. To us, there's no line between that public and that private. We manage it all the same.
Years ago, Steve and Robin attended holistic resource management classes. The new information they gained caused them to reevaluate how they were managing their land and their cattle.
We were operating pretty much as it always had been for years, and it was becoming obvious that we needed to do something different.
There was a real paradigm shift that had to happen. And, just because your grandfather did it or it's been done for 100 years doesn't mean it's the right thing.
It really did open our minds to how beneficial cattle could be to the land if managed properly.
The first step was to create a rotational grazing plan for a ranch that had been managed the same way for decades.
Nothing was getting any kind of rest. There weren't the fences to do much of, control the cattle. And, it was obvious something needed to happen and to change management, but you can't change your management with cattle if you don't have the fencing and the water improvements. So it's really critical before grazing management changes are made to have those infrastructure improvements in place.
The changes we made in our grazing plan and the time of year of those cattle, they're out on the range now, and we're supplementing them on native grass, which has really helped the amount of hay that we feed in the winter. We've cut it in half, which has been a big help not only to us financially, but also to the land.
There are definitely noticeable improvements on the land that Steve and Robin manage. This area we're standing in here now, before a change in management had occurred, this was just dirt. And now we have all this grass and riparian vegetation. I just appreciate the opportunity to, be on the land that they have taken such good care of.
It's not a fast process, but we've been learning and we've had some successes, and we feel that we've turned the land around. We've turned it around not in spite of cattle, but because of cattle. We use those cattle as a tool, and you don't have a lot of tools out here, and grazing is one of them.
Making change happen alone is difficult, so Steve and Robin helped create the Shoe Sole Management Team. This collaboration brought together the people of neighboring ranches and government agencies to share ideas and to help make resource management decisions together.
The working relationship between the private and the public, it has to work together. And that's where these meetings and these partners we have in this collaborative group are so important. We meet 3 times a year. That way we have input from those entities that have concerns out there. If they have a concern, they bring it up at the meeting and we all talk about it and we adjust.
You're getting everybody together and basically trying to get at, this is what all of our desired outcomes are for what do we want to see on the ground, and then how are we going to get there through the types of management that we put in place.
It takes a lot of trust on the rancher side, takes a lot of trust on the agency side, and I think what they've done has been this great example of how this can work.
They know if we say we're going to do something, we try to do it. And so just that trust and that working relationship is extremely important in a ranch that has to deal with this much federal land.
For Steve and Robin, the commitment to stewardship has only grown stronger over the years, and they work hard every day to take the actions that will sustain this land and its natural beauty.
Steve and I feel that our job isn't done here. Our objective is to leave things better than when we started out 43 years ago.
We may not see the benefits of many of the things that we're doing right now, but for the generations to come behind us, they will see it, and that means a lot to us. And I hope that the future generations can enjoy it as much as Robin and I have.
When we come back, we have one more ESAP regional winner to show you, this time in South Dakota. Stay with us.
From the very beginning, Ritchie has been dedicated to one thing: helping people deliver fresh, constant water to their animals. Today's Ritchie waterers rely on a valve design that remains much the same as it was in 1921. It's a simple idea. Do it right, and the rest will take care of itself. We never set out to create a company that would be around for 100 years. We just wanted to create something great.
Weeds will rob me of my investments. The weeds are not palatable to the cows. They will not eat them, or if they do eat them, some of them may be toxic. So there's a return on investment by allowing there to be more grass available to be grazed by the cattle.
Welcome back. We're bringing you some great stories about conservation as we highlight the 2020 Environmental Stewardship Award winners. Now let's visit South Dakota for the Region 7 winner.
In the rolling hills of South Dakota's James River Valley, Brian and Jamie Johnson are raising their kids on the farm that has family roots going back more than a century.
My great-grandfather settled here in 1906, and so it's been passed down to the generations, and we farm with my parents, Alan and Mickey, and my wife Jamie, and all our 4 kids.
Brian and I are the 4th generation on this farm, so our kids will be the 5th generation of people living here and working the land. That's kind of one thing that we're really proud of, that it's always been owned and operated by the Johnson family.
Working together on the farm each day, Brian and Jamie are sharply focused on soil health, growing their crops and caring for their cow-calf herd in ways that build the sustainability of all their natural resources. The road to healthier soil began more than 3 decades ago when Brian's dad, Alan, decided to convert the operation to no-till.
In the spring of '86, I started no-tilling, and then basically is to save moisture, raise a crop, just conserve things. It has been a great thing to do for this farm.
We try not to disturb the soil at all. When we're planting, we don't disc or till anything. The same thing, we leave all the residue on the field after harvest. We don't bale corn stalks, we don't bale wheat. All that residue helps capture moisture for those dry years, which is really helpful, but it also helps feed the soil microbes.
By coupling their no-till practices with cover crops, the Johnsons have improved both water infiltration and soil health, making their land more productive. In addition, the cover crops and crop residue left after harvest provide a valuable added feed source that benefits both their cattle and the land.
We've been using cover crops for over 10 years, and we've really seen so much improvement in herd health and in soil health. So they really provide a lot of nutrients and diversity for your soil, but it's like giving your cattle a smorgasbord of salad bar goodness.
By having the grass acres that we do and being able to run cattle on these acres and then in turn run them on some crop acres as well in the fall, it increases our profitability, reduces our fertilizer costs, and everything just works hand in hand.
With their cattle, Brian and Jamie have worked to make continuous improvement. They've adopted artificial insemination to better time their calving season with available grazing, installed new water systems, and implemented rotational grazing to maximize the productivity of their grass.
Rotational grazing on our farm works great because it's a way to get the most out of the grass acres that we have available to us, but also improve the quality of those acres.
We're constantly monitoring each paddock to see how things look. And last year we put in an extensive well system with new water tanks to different paddocks of our pastures. So that really is going to make grazing a lot easier.
It amazes me, when we drive out here and check the pastures, and it's 2 months of growth that just is phenomenal. And Mother Nature had a part in it, but part of our system is a factor as well. And it's just a blessing.
In addition to taking steps to foster more diverse grasslands and healthier soils, the Johnsons have put some of their acres into the Conservation Reserve Program and created buffer strips to protect the creek that winds its way through the farm.
Timber Creek runs right through the center of our main pasture here on the farm, and so it's part of our management of our grazing lands and in the pasture here to maintain a clean water source there for us as well as the people downstream.
Where Timber Creek flows through our land is all in pasture. We don't farm anything up around that watershed. It's really important for us to have those grasses along those areas to act as that filter system to keep the water healthy.
They've been a great voice for soil health, a great voice for stewardship of the land. I wish we could work with more producers like this.
Without question, the Johnson family knows how to balance cattle, crops, and conservation. And each day, they're learning, improving, and passing on the lessons in stewardship that will ensure a sustainable future for their family and their land.
We're just here for a little bit, and it's to be passed on to the next generation, and so let's make it better. That's stewardship to me.
We're always striving to do better and be better for the land and for the next generation.
It's something that we believe in, and our kids have really caught on with it. When you drive through the pasture with them and they see the variety of grasses out here and the lushness of the forage that's available to the cows, they understand that stewardship pays off. Taking care of the land and the soil, it's a good thing, and they see the results at a very young age. This is what the dream looks like right here, living on the land and enjoying every minute of it.
Well, that's all for this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Russell Nimitz, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you again next week right here on RFD TV.